Welcome to Hot Takes and Headlocks, the only show where we interview you, pro wrestling fans, about your love for professional wrestling. I'm your host, Joe Zaletta. We have a great one for you tonight. But before we get to our guest, hit a GTS on that like and subscribe button on the Hardcore Sports Network Facebook and YouTube page. The best YouTube channel where you get all you need for all things sports, news, watch alongs, live reactions. If you're watching live, light up our interactive chat and be part of the conversation. Let us know where you're chatting to us from. The more engaged our audience is, the better we can make the show for you. And finally, if you want to leave us some feedback or you want to be on an upcoming Hot Takes and Headlocks episode, email me at hottakesandheadlocks@gmail.com so we can schedule you for a future show. And now, our guest tonight, a man of many talents. He is a musician, a teacher, wrestling insider, and journalist for WrestleView, coming to us live from New Jersey. Here is Mike Tedesco!
Wow, that was probably the best intro I've ever gotten on any podcast I think that I've ever done in my entire life.
That's awesome. Great.
A lot of energy there. I hope I can bring as much energy to that as you brought for mine here. It's good. It's great to be here. It's good to be here again. We've known each other for such a long time. When you messaged me about this, about doing a wrestling podcast, I was like, it's full circle. You knew me before I was like when I was nobody. I wasn't. I'm not even sure I'm still somebody or anything like that.
Oh,
but before you knew me before I was even in WrestleView, and I've been with WrestleView for almost 20 years now.
20 years.
Yeah, you were with me. I've known you since before the whole craziness of my fandom really kicked off.
Wow, man. Wow. It's crazy how much time just rolls by.
It flies, dude. It flies. Man alive.
All those events we would attend over at that Hooters in Wayne.
I gotta tell you, every time I drive by that Hooters on 23, and it still looks like it's like ready for a pay-per-view. I have no idea how an abandoned building still looks like you could just like walk right in and grab a Cuban sandwich and get ready to watch some pro wrestling. It looks great, but I gotta tell you, like I think about it every single time I drive by there. I'm like, man, I miss that atmosphere. I miss those people. Like some people were a little nuts.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those crowds got a little crazy sometimes.
There were some people that were like missing so many teeth that you needed to like take a taxi from like one tooth to the next. But it's like that's wrestling. That's why I love going to the arena show still. But
part of me feels like those types of spots are probably going to get an uptick in customers coming through, especially with this ESPN announcement that came out yesterday. Argument can be made that $30 a month to get PLEs is quite the price tag right there, not including Netflix on top of that.
Right. You need Netflix just to watch Raw now.
Yep.
No matter where you are, internationally, here in America, it's all Netflix now, with a few exceptions. But the whole thing with like, I was hoping, because all the pay-per-views and everything are on Netflix internationally, I was hoping that eventually that would all move over there as well. But instead they announced this ESPN deal, and it's not as horrible as like, I don't know why WWE didn't lean into it with saying that if you have a cable subscription, like not every cable company, but like if you have like certain like a certain cable company, like I think like one of them's like Optimum or something like that, or Spectrum. If you have ESPN on your package already, just like HBO, if you subscribe to HBO, you have an automatic subscription to HBO Max. I have Xfinity. It does not include Xfinity. I couldn't believe it. I'm so bummed about that. So I saw this meme on when I was like filtering through. I still call it Twitter. It'll be Twitter forever. But I saw this meme.
I agree, by the way.
Yeah,
always going to be Twitter.
Come on. I saw this thing on the 90s WWE where it's like Triple H on the microphone. He goes, "For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching on VPN at home."
That's perfect.
It's going to be the reality.
Yeah, there's going to be so many VPNs uh, active just to be able to watch these shows, so that because you can't afford it. Well, a lot of people may not be able to afford it.
Right. You're talking $360 a year. I mean, like, the whole reason why WWE Network was like so great was, do you remember the price it was? Oh yeah, $9.99. Oh my
Yeah.
God, how many times and it's like how annoying that was. And the $9.99. It's like, seeing what they've done to it since WWE Network's been gone. Like, you can't watch any of the old school Raws anymore. I had to go out of my way to like find the old school Raws again. Like, the pay-per-view on Peacock is somehow not as good as on the WWE Network, and just everything is like so spread over all these different platforms. I miss the WWE Network so much, man. I
Me
never thought
too,
I'd see
man.
it, but like, wow, what a you don't know when you're in the good old days until you're out of them. I wish
Yeah.
somebody told me.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. I remember WrestleMania 30, the first WrestleMania you could stream on the WWE Network. Was it perfect? No, it was spotty, connection problems here and there, but gradually things got better and better and better, and then before you know it, it was very smooth, no issues, barely any, and then you know what? We're gonna sell our pay-per-view streaming rights to Peacock. Okay. Do I have to pay more? No. Okay. Then fine. That's fine. But this company is so successful, and it's such a double-edged sword from a fan's point of view, right? Because you want to see them to be successful, and you want them, like everything and anything that they can do to kind of be more mainstream and legitimize themselves. I want to see that for them, of course, right? But then, as with any success goes, like it's all about, it's a business at the end of the day. They want to be able to make that dollar, and
Right.
it's that's the part that a lot of fans don't necessarily agree with.
Right. I wish that, like, as like companies pursue the almighty dollar, that, and as much as like we'd like to see like these companies be successful sometimes, because it means that they'll be around for a long time. And this is like, a continuation of like, just like a lifelong love of mine. It just feels like every single time something like this happens, mostly the fans get lost in the shuffle. But they're not doing anything that anybody else isn't doing right now.
Correct.
Like, you want to watch Monday Night Football, you have to have a subscription, a subscription to something. Or I'm sorry, Thursday Night Football. You need to be on. You have to have an Amazon Prime subscription. They're spreading all of these different avenues out, across all these streaming platforms. Like, if you want to watch some Yankee games, you have to have Apple TV or something like that. They're just following suit. Las Vegas has priced the average middle class person out, now in favor of like Fontainebleau hotels and things like that. Like, Taylor Swift, when they were doing it, it all started there, really. As soon as they realized that people were willing to pay an astronomical amount of money just to have the privilege of having an experience, gloves are off. You looked at like what Bruce Springsteen did. Try to get tickets to like any concert now. It's outrageous. I saw like tickets for like an Elton John, Billy Joel cover band. We're going for like $150, $200. I'm like, wow,
no way,
a cover band. We're talking a cover band. I got out of the cover band business, I guess, at the wrong time. I was in a cover band for 10 years, and we could have been raking in the money now, I guess. But they're just doing what everybody else is doing, and it just kind of like, it kind of sucks that it just winds up costing you more money, even though like they're successful. The business will be around for a long, long time. It's just, they're just crushing you on your, it's just more money out of your paycheck every month.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, on what side of the fence do you land on when it comes to that ESPN deal WWE announced yesterday?
I mean, I think it's great. Like you said, it brings a lot more legitimacy to it. I've been dying for kind of just like an update to the look of the show. And we got it after Vince McMahon left. You started getting the drone shots. You started getting like those long camera shots around the ring as they're wrestling, which I really love. I love, you know, the stuff, every show starts off with them walking in and kind of teasing matches and things like that. Like there have been a lot of improvements from a production standpoint, but I'm actually interested to see like what ESPN can bring to the table and kind of give it more of like that, you know, sporting feel to it as well. You know, they already have Lee Fitting as one of their executive producers, which is, he has added a lot to, he came from ESPN, so he added a lot to that presentation. But I'm kind of curious to see like how the presentation continues to evolve and improve.
I honestly thought ESPN, that relationship would come to fruition much earlier when they brought Jonathan Coachman back a few years ago. You know, him being part of ESPN for pretty much a better point of a decade after he left WWE to the time that he came back. I thought that we would see more of an ESPN partnership then, but it didn't really happen then. And we have it now, but still, I thought it would happen sooner than.
I think a lot of that had to
25.
do with probably like Vince McMahon and the whole entire just power grab. You know, he really was reluctant to let any control of the show go. So if you're partnering with another company and you're going to be on their streaming platform, they're going to have a say in what they want. And the only reason the company got sold, you know, by Vince was because he basically got pushed out of it anyway. So yeah, I think a lot of the things that are happening are things that really materialized in the last couple of years after the pandemic. You know, streaming is king and content is king, and WWE produces a lot of content. All of a sudden, they're the belle of the ball. Whereas like before the pandemic, they were still kind of like, even though they were getting hotter and the stock price was up way big, they still were like looked at as like the redheaded stepchild of entertainment. Yeah. And now it's like they don't care. You know, they've created a lot of like really great mainstream stars. They have a great look, great presentation. They've run away from they've distanced themselves enough from scandal, although they invited a lot back in after SummerSlam.
Yeah, a lot of criticism with that decision.
Yes, indeed, but yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to so much more. I want to backtrack and really start off with the question that I ask everyone at the beginning of every show, and you know, let's start back at the beginning. What are your earliest memories watching pro wrestling?
Oh man, so I guess you and I are probably around the same age, right? But you're just aging a lot better than I am. I think I'm 1987.
No, you got a little something on top here that I don't have the pleasure of sporting as good as I used to anymore.
There's a lot of real estate right here, though. So. But my earliest
85, memories, baby, 87. Yeah, we're right there.
All right. So, like, my earliest memories really are of the Hulkster and like really like Hulkster and Earthquake was kind of like what I came in on, and really, you know, intersecting with like Ultimate Warrior. We had I was only like 3 years old like when WrestleMania 6 happened, but I do remember a lot of like watching wrestling in like 1991. You know, right before I like was in kindergarten and stuff like that. We had the Wrestling Buddies, and I had my blue plastic WWF ring. Remember that one? I don't know if you ever had that, but it was like they had this like blue play set. I think it was like I can't remember the name of the toy company. I wish I still had it, because it's probably like even beat up, it's probably, you know, worth something.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but it had like a little ringside, a monitor for Gorilla, and Bobby the Brain used to sit like when they're at ringside and stuff like that. And I had my Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake, my favorite of all time, Jake the Snake, Hogan, and Macho Man, and Ultimate Warrior. Like those are like my characters. And you know, we would just catch like a Superstars every now and then. We weren't like watching wrestling every week. You know, it was like just kind of something that you would just, you know, kind of catch like on a Saturday or something like that.
Now, there was no Monday Night Raw at that time just yet, right?
No, Raw came January 93, and Yeah, but my earliest memories really are of those toys and those play sets. Like they had the best merchandise back then, and that's really like how you reached kids big time was through the toys.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if you didn't watch the show, you had those things and you could dream on them. I still have my Big Boss Man action figure from back then. He in his like powder blue policeman uniform. They even like sculpted in like the big gut on him.
Yeah.
He's
the
a little
strap coming down the
correct.
front. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, he's a little worse for wear. Like when we became teenagers, it's like I don't know how, but Boss Man wound up at the bottom of our pool as it got covered for the winter, and I think we were just like running an experiment, but when it got open, next spring, you get the pool cleared out with all the chemicals and stuff like that, and we went to the bottom of the pool and retrieved the Boss Man. Still maintained his colors. He still looks good. I still have him to this day.
No way.
Yeah. It's at my mom's house somewhere. But yeah, so Boss Man really, like, I have a whole bunch of toys from like the Attitude Era stuff too. But
wow,
that Boss Man character was like he was another one of my all-time faves. But Jake the Snake was my number one guy. Loved Jake the Snake. Loved Damien. He was a little scary to me as a kid, but I like when you develop in your fandom and you understand like what Jake the Snake was doing, he became like one of my all-time favorites. And weird story on my vacation that I just got back from last week. We were on the boardwalk in Wildwood, and I've been showing my daughter. My oldest is 5. I've been showing her like for the rest of you, like sometimes just for fun, I'll recap old pay-per-views and stuff like that. And we were recapping some old Royal Rumbles heading into the Royal Rumble this year, and she like just for whatever reason you can't help people's tastes, I suppose, but she fell in love with Tito Santana.
Oh wow,
yeah,
no way.
She just loved because I guess like when you're watching a Rumble of like big hulking steroided freaks like just clubbing away at each other, then Tito runs in and starts doing like running crossbodies. It's a little more exciting. And she so she was going around the house like Arriba, Arriba, Arriba. I had him do a cameo for her, but then we were on the boardwalk and we're at this like random arcade on one of the piers, and it says, "Oh, Tito Santana here on Tuesday from 4 to 5." I was like, Tito Santana? And then I look, and then so I go into the place. I'm like, is Tito really coming here? Like, where is he going to be? Is it here or is it somewhere else? And they're like, oh, well, he's here. And then there's a show at the convention center. I was like, whoa. Now that at the show is going to be Sergeant Slaughter. I've met before. I met Slaughter before. Was Tatanka. I've met Tatanka a million times. Not interested. Demolition, one of my favorite tag teams of all time. Tito, of course. And Jake the Snake.
Wow.
Jake the Snake. I've always wanted to meet him. And like, this is like days after Hogan passed away. And I was like, you know what? Like when Hogan passed away, say what you want about him, but it was still sad because it's just like a piece of like my childhood, like just kind of gone. I was believe it or not, I was sadder about Ozzy Osbourne than I think I was about Hogan, just because of all the craziness surrounding Hulk, through the years and the lies and and the other craziness. But I was like, you know what? This is a sign. We got to go to the convention center. We were going to be down there, and I went. I finally got to meet Jake the Snake, and Cheryl Roberts was there too.
No way.
Yeah. And when Hogan passed away, with SummerSlam coming up, I was like, let me just recap the first SummerSlam because he was in the main event for that. And that was
was that 90s wrestling con that was going on down there in Wildwood?
Yeah, it wasn't 90s. I think it was just like a Wrestling Legends night or something like that. They had,
okay.
Yeah, it was right before WrestleCon, so like a whole bunch of people flew in. I guess they were going to go to WrestleCon. They figured they could make another paycheck down there. So I got to meet like Francine from ECW, Todd Gordon. I've never met those two before. Sandman, I've seen a bunch of times. It's great, like when you go to these things and you see them, they're like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And I interviewed Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who was there at one point, so it was kind of cool to see some of those people. Then, like, there's Jake the Snake, and on that first SummerSlam is the SummerSlam where Rick Rude had Cheryl Roberts painted on his tights.
Yes.
I was like, so I see Cheryl, I'm like, oh my god, I just watched something where you were like a huge part of the angle. You're like a wrestling legend yourself, and she was all happy about that. So
that is so cool. But your daughter got hooked on Tito first.
Yes. And I have a great picture of her and Tito together at the event. He signed autographs for her. He was like so gracious, so nice to her. I don't know how she got hooked on Tito, but like, I'm assuming it's just because he was just moving faster than everybody else was in the Rumble.
Yeah. I still remember the first time I ever watched a wrestling match on TV, and it so happened to be Tito Santana versus Tatanka, and it was on a random episode, a Saturday episode of WWF Superstars.
Yes.
And Saturday morning, I'm watching this. I'm like, what is this? And I happened to watch it at the perfect time because you got the whole experience of the entrance, the music, Tatanka's whole gear, and I was like, what is this? What is this? And I just the more I learned, the more questions that I had, and I just got sucked deep into it even more, right? So I'll always have Tatanka and Tito Santana to thank for being the first wrestling match I ever watched.
Oh, I wish I knew this. I would have like FaceTimed them when I was at the thing. I was like, oh my gosh, because they're both there.
Oh,
the whole beginning of your whole entire fandom right there.
Right there, man. Right there. Shoot. Hulk Hogan passing away. Where were you when you found out?
I was so we were down in Wildwood for like 2 weeks, and this was the beginning of our second week down there, and I was like, I like to sleep in a little bit during the summer, and I got a text from I woke up and I just looked at my phone, and I saw like a bunch of like New York Times things, but I didn't read them. I was just kind of like coming to, and then my sister texted me and goes, did you see Hulk Hogan died? I was like, whoa, what? I couldn't believe it. It's like, how many times did Hogan say, oh, that doesn't work for me, brother? I thought, the immortal gimmick would be forever. I didn't think death worked for him either, but yeah, it was shocking. Really, really surprising. I mean, I knew that he was like not well, and I kind of had an inkling, from how his daughter distanced herself from him, and just his overall thing about, he just seemed incapable of telling the truth at a certain point in his life. And all these business ventures, these like random things with that Real American Wrestling and the beer, and they're going to open up a restaurant by Madison Square Garden dedicated to him, and his beach shop and karaoke. I'm like, this guy's in his 70s, heavy steroid user, many surgeries, many injuries. Like, these people are like running him into the ground. So I can't say I was like surprised by it, but like I was still really sad about it. And I wound up, doing a couple things for WrestleView. I wrote a kind of like a long obituary for him, and just kind of spending all day like kind of just like looking at these things and trying to figure out what the heck happened. And it was a really sad day. I never wound up making it to the beach. My wife took the kids, 3 kids on her own.
Wow.
But it was, I was really sad. I was like sadder about Ozzy Osbourne dying, because he just seemed like a genuinely great guy, and I just love that music. I loved his music. He's such a great songwriter, and just really like defined a whole entire genre of music. You look at the top 100 metal albums. He's probably got 4 in the top 10.
Well, Ozzy, both guys passed away from illnesses, natural causes, and all that. Ozzy, though, because it was still very fresh in our minds. He had his last show.
Yes.
and and you could argue that he went out. He rode off into the sunset. He went off on on his own terms in a way.
Right. On a total high,
Yeah,
like,
on a total high. Yeah.
um, it's like, those people who just like they give their whole lives to their jobs and like they retire and then within like months or like a year of like being retired they die. It's like crazy. Like my grandmother, for example, she loved to tell everybody, oh, I'm independent, I've done this, I paid for this, I did this, I didn't. She was married. Her and my grandfather were married for like almost 50 years. When he passed away in 2002, everybody thought, well, grandma is like gonna go downhill quickly. But because she had a job, because she had like purpose, and she was determined to like keep moving forward, and paying for her own car, paying, they already had the house paid off, but like helping out the family where she could and things like that. That sustained her for so long. And when she finally had to retire from like working at ShopRite, that's what she did. She worked at ShopRite. Within a year or a year and a half, she was gone, because it just like she felt like she lost her independence and lost so much of that drive. I think Ozzy was kind of keeping himself going just to get that show. He kept saying, I remember seeing an interview with him for a couple of years ago when the pandemic happened. He's like, I got to get back on that stage, man. I got to get back on that stage. You think about his WWE Hall of Fame induction speech, which was like, like 30 seconds long. He's like, I really don't deserve this, but thank you. But he there was a key line in there that he goes, it's our fans, man. It's our fans that keep us alive. And he was living for that one final moment. And I think when he got it, that was it. He was able to free himself, I guess. But he was just a great guy. You think he was like way ahead on so many issues, like even though like he was like the Prince of Darkness, like total kindness, and even like TV as we know it, he was influential in that too. Hogan Knows Best doesn't happen without the Osbournes.
That's true.
But those two shows probably were the most popular of those reality family shows, celebrity family shows to happen. So for them to kind of go, 2 days apart was like kind of like, wow, it's a bad day. It's a bad week to be 80s fans. And then, Theo from the Cosby Show also died. So, wow.
That was a tough week for those losses, man.
Yeah.
Tough week. You mentioned before the whole, Hogan being a polarizing figure. You could say whatever you say about him, the politics and whatnot. But at the end of the day, he was so good at what he did, generating reactions. He put pro wrestling in such a mainstream space, and he did a lot of good for the wrestling business. I would say he did more good than bad, in my opinion. But in hindsight, after his passing, when you think about it, what does Hulkamania mean to you?
Well, that's a great question, because Hulkamania to me, as a kid, is like the thing that keeps you like on the straight and narrow. It's a great example to give to your kids, to try to want to be healthy, to want to do the right thing, to want to stand up for good. Hulk Hogan, the character, is really like a phenomenal, spectacular character, because what did he do other than just inspire people to be better and do their best, say your prayers, train, take your vitamins. It's all about being the best that you can be. And that was great for me growing up, and I argue, and I'm sure, even though there's people that are like culture vultures and, just because he didn't, Terry Bollea didn't emerge from the primordial soup as like, as like the perfect human. I'm not going to sit here and discount, the majority of his life spent making people, inspired, and all the things that he did for Make-A-Wish. And he wasn't a phony, like with a lot of like that stuff. I know that, a lot of it, he made a lot of money doing this, but I do think that that character was just so good. I think Hulkamania is a great thing, and he was the perfect guy to throw the company on the back of as they tried to expand nationally. It was a great figure that you don't need to be in the Northeast to connect with him. You don't need to be from Mid-South wrestling to connect with him. It was universal.
Yeah. Would you when you think of WrestleManias, maybe your top favorite WrestleMania is it one where Hulk Hogan is in the main event?
Uh he's in one of them.
He's in one of them. Okay.
For sure. WrestleMania 19, the Hogan Vince match. That's a great match.
Yeah.
It wasn't the main event of the show, but if you have the DVD of that show, they're on the cover. So even though they weren't the last match to go on, that was the main event.
That never made sense to me either, because even with WrestleMania 18, Hogan and Rock were on the cover, but they weren't the main event.
Hogan and Rock are the thing that you remember from that show, though.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that you remember from that show. They probably in hindsight should have just gone on last, but I appreciate that they put them on like third from last or whatever it is. They put like a women's match in between before Triple H and Chris Jericho. Not the right choice at the end, but I appreciate that they still were like, the title is number one. And
yeah.
I don't know how much of that was like, well, it's Paul Levesque too, it was in the main event. I'm going for the title. It's my big return match. But like they had no chance after that. They had no chance. That's one of my favorite matches too. I mean, if you watch that match on mute, it probably is not that great, but it's, man, like that atmosphere is unbelievable. Like I've never seen a crowd that into like one person as they were into Hulk Hogan that night. I still remember there was this like heavy set guy in the front row. He was like taking pictures on like this like gigantic digital camera. I remember like how big those things, they were like bricks back in the day. And when he started hulking up, this guy was like going nuts. He was like, he's in a white shirt. He's dead center. You can go back and watch it. I love this guy. He's probably my favorite fan of all time. When he hulks up, hits the boot, hits the leg drop, this guy's counting it, as is the rest of the place. 1, 2. And this guy melts when The Rock kicks out. I love that guy. I want to see the pictures that he was taking on his digital camera, and I just want to meet that guy and just say, like, you're awesome. Like, he really made that moment for me. That was such a cool match. But Hogan's definitely, he was in the main event or one of the main events of WrestleMania 19. But, I have to say, like, WrestleMania 40 last year in Philadelphia, 2 nights of each night was just fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Even WrestleMania 39 was phenomenal. This year's WrestleMania, I don't know what the hell happened. Somebody got like dropped on their head or something like that, because it was not that great, other than like the Saturday night main event was decent. But my favorite WrestleManias of all time, not a lot of them involve Hulk Hogan.
All right.
But fair. I appreciate what Hogan did on those WrestleManias. And like, again, 18, 19, 18 is definitely not considered a favorite, but that Hogan Rock match is one of my favorites of all time.
And they had a second one too. It wasn't a Mania. It wasn't a WrestleMania, but it was No Way Out. Yeah, No Way Out 2003. Rock Hogan 2.
Yeah, in Montreal, where they redid the screw job again. Yep. How many times they went back to that? Oh my God! Like I was like, when Vince finally went away, I was like, well, at least we can finally go to Montreal and not do a screw job finish. They did it almost every single time they went there. I remember there was like a Raw they did a couple years ago where like Sami Zayn was like in the main event and they screwed him. Because it's Montreal, we got to screw the Canadian in Montreal. It's like, oh God, get a new. Sorry, I don't want to.
You squeezed out all that you can from the Montreal screw job. We don't have to keep revisiting it over and over and over again.
Over 25 years later. Come on. Let's move on with our lives here.
I know. So with that said, if you were to set up your Mount Rushmore of favorite WrestleManias, Now, I don't mean WrestleMania main events. I mean WrestleMania all like
Oh,
everything.
I can name for you. Yeah, I could definitely. Um, WrestleMania 17 is the best WrestleMania of all time, top to bottom. That card was stacked. It was like the culmination of the Attitude Era, and really the end of it when Steve Austin turns heel at the end. Steve Austin turning heel in hindsight is like the worst thing to ever happen to professional wrestling, other than like, at that time at least, other than WCW going out of business. It was like a double whammy that week. You lost ECW and WCW pretty much all at the same time. And Steve Austin's not a face anymore. What are we doing here? Like, it was too much change at one time. But that match with Rock and Austin, even when he was turning heel, in the process of turning heel, and he hits Rock with the stunner, listen to the kick out. And anybody listening, I just invite you to go back and just watch that highlight of when Austin hits him with the stunner. The entire Astrodome counts 1, 2, and when Rock kicks out, you hear like, just for like half a second, 70,000 people just, everything, it's like the air just got sucked out of the place, and everybody just goes, oh. It was such an amazing moment in time. I remember watching that at my, in my family room, just going nuts.
Yeah.
And like talking about it in English class the next day. I was in 8th grade. It was such oh my God, what a great WrestleMania. WrestleMania 19, I would put number 2. So Mount Rushmore, we only get like 4, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, oh God. I would say WrestleMania
19, the closing match that night was Brock and
Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you also had Rock and Austin on that one too. I mean, like the last 3 matches loaded, one after the other. Hogan, McMahon, Austin, Rock, Brock, and Kurt. Like, that's just a legendary thing. I mean, it falls to number 2. It would have been like number 1 for me. I really loved that WrestleMania. You had Jericho and Shawn Michaels on that card. But it does fall to number 2 just because Triple H versus Booker T is the worst feud, I think, in the history of professional wrestling. And their match at WrestleMania is one of the worst I've ever seen from a world title match, other than the one this past year at WrestleMania with Travis Scott. It's like...
You talk about things falling apart, man. That whole Travis Scott deal.
Yeah, Paul Heyman admitted on Ariel Helwani yesterday that, yeah, you know what, that deal did fall apart and we had to move on without him.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when I was watching WWE Unreal, I was like, oh God, I hate this even more. Every time I watch it, I'm like, that Cena heel turn, how pointless at this,
Oh, we're gonna talk about that Cena.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so I got 2 of them so far. 17, 19. I'm gonna put WrestleMania 20 on there. It's kind of like the WrestleMania that's forgotten now because of the Benoit thing, which is totally understandable and warranted. It's just on there because it was my first WrestleMania that I ever went to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden. That triple threat. If the whole thing with Benoit didn't happen, I think that's considered probably the best WrestleMania match of all time, or one of the best WrestleMania main events of all time. It was that good. That triple threat was probably the best triple threat I've ever seen. I've never seen a better one. You also had the Return of the Dead Man, which was not a great match, but just seeing Paul Bearer come out and being there for that. And then, when I really developed my fandom, and I was convinced for a little while that I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I went, I even went to IWF, which was based in West Patterson, at a wrestling school run by Kevin Knight. I was going to join a wrestling school. I was that close. I was very, very close. It's like go trying to be a wrestler. It was Mick Foley. He was my guy. That was, Foley was my number 1, and that was his return match. Rock and Sock Connection versus Evolution at that event. John Cena's first WrestleMania, it just couldn't get any better, and it was at Madison Square Garden. I thought it was a great show, but it's kind of like the show that's forgotten about forever. Kurt Angle versus Eddie Guerrero on that show.
That one too, yeah.
Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg. Oops.
Oh man, booed the entire time, man.
Oh man.
Never seen that. Never seen that happen before. I don't think I've ever seen that kind of fan reaction since then either.
I other than just like a Roman Reigns WrestleMania main event before he became, the tribal chief.
Yeah.
Some of those main events really were hijacked. The one in Dallas in particular against Triple H, and even the one in New Orleans with Brock Lesnar, that was just hijacked. People just did not they turned it. They did not want to see Roman Reigns win anything. He was he was talking about tater tots and suffering succotash. And,
Succotash, yeah.
people were like, no, not
Wow.
doing it for me. So yeah, but never that bad. Never that bad. They never. I don't think people liked Roman Reigns, but I don't think they hated him. They hated Brock Lesnar and Goldberg in this match. They
Yeah.
hated them. I still remember walking into the concourse, and it just happened like that weekend, like a day or two before. I remember seeing it on WrestleView that Brock Lesnar was going to the NFL, and I was like, "This is BS. No way." And it was true. Then they said, like, WrestleMania 20, he's finishing up right here, and we were walking in, and there was a sign of like somebody made a sign of Brock Lesnar in a ballerina tutu or something like that. Like, it was like hilarious, like some of the signs that I saw. But some of those chants, when I went back and did a retro recap of WrestleMania 20 for WrestleView, they cut out a lot of the chants. I remember vividly a lot of the more vulgar chants that happened.
Wow.
They didn't make it onto the network shows.
I'm sure you could find like an original version of it on YouTube somewhere. And
Yeah, my friend John, like, he used to record every single WWE pay-per-view that he ordered. His room was stacked with like video cassettes, so he probably has it somewhere. I have to get John to show me one day if you can find it. You knew John. He used to kind of Hooters too to watch.
Oh yeah,
to watch the pay-per-views. He's a little quiet, so maybe you don't remember, but he humongous fan. And I guess my last one, if I had to put on the Mount Rushmore, probably WrestleMania 39.
Oh wow, okay.
That was just a great show. Although I really did like WrestleMania 38 with Austin returning, but WrestleMania 39, in recent years, an excellent WrestleMania, holds up really, really well. Cody versus Roman, at the time, I was like apoplectic about the finish because I was like, oh, they screwed, they didn't. It was like a Daniel Bryan situation. I was like, oh my God, they didn't strike while the iron's hot. But it made sense. Like, I actually appreciate them holding off for another year to get to WrestleMania 40, which was even bigger. It was even more humongous when that turn finally happened. But on the Saturday night show, you had the tag titles in the main event: Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos.
That was great.
In a certifiable 5-star match. Then, on WrestleMania Sunday, you had a certifiable match with Gunther's Intercontinental title defense. It was unbelievable, with Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. Like, these are like all-time great WrestleMania matches. And then even like a tag team 4-way match was unbelievable. The only thing that I think that wasn't great was like Brock versus Omos. But who cares? That was like the first match of the show. Who cares?
Yeah.
I really, really like that WrestleMania. I got to go back and watch that again because it was really good.
Wow. Those are some really good picks right there. So we got 17, 19, 20, and 39.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good picks. And I felt the same way about Cody losing at 39. Dude, he should have won it. Strike while the iron is hot. And they made it work where they pretty much asked the fans, hold on, trust us, give us another year. You think he's hot now? He's going to be even hotter a year from now. And they were right. They pulled it off, and a year later, it was even better, him going up against Roman Reigns the second time around. Now, they're not their calls aren't always on point when they try to do that strategy with others, right? Like, they had a chance with LA Knight and they didn't do anything with him. They've had a lot of outcry and support for Karrion Kross, and that didn't come to fruition either.
Not yet, at least for Karrion Kross. I think they want to see how it sustains. I think like with LA Knight, they waited, like they wanted to see if it would sustain as well. Like, you know, he kind of got like really, really hot in 2023 out of nowhere. And I think they were like, well, you know, it's too early for him to win Money in the Bank, so let's hold off a little bit. And then they just wound up holding off too long on him, where it's like he's kind of like in that weird limbo now, where even if he gets an opportunity, like on Monday, you know, he got the world title shot against Seth Rollins, and it was just like the whole time you're like, no chance. No chance. So he's that guy now. He's that guy that like they'll put out there because he gets a great reaction, but he's like he's almost like Dolph Ziggler, you know, where remember how big people were into him in like were you at that Raw after WrestleMania where he cashed in the Money in the Bank?
I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there too. Unbelievable. That's one of the loudest pops I've ever heard personally at a show. But you know, other than really that moment, they never did really anything with him. But like the crowd wanted them to do something. So when he would come out, the Ziggler pop would be like outrageous. And then you just hear it diminishing week by week as they continue to job him out and people start losing hope. You know, LA Knight's not there yet, but like, I don't know if he's like world title material either.
That window of opportunity, man, just because of his age, it's just closing on him. I feel like. Yeah,
him and Karrion Kross, believe it or not, are really very similar cases. You know, good characters. LA Knight's a way better character than I think Karrion Kross is, but there's something compelling about Karrion Kross, and I kind of like his story. You know, when you follow him on social media, he wrote a book and everything. He's trying to push right now, and you know how he kind of came back from being, you know, on his butt. You know, from being, you know, when Vince put that weird gladiator jockstrap on his head for whatever reason. I don't know what the hell that was. That was bizarre, and I thought his career was over. But the problem with them is like they do great character work, and they could build a great feud. It's just when the bell rings, and you know, back the day of Hogan, these guys could have been really great, you know, mind game monsters to go after Hogan, and they could just go and have like a basic big man, typical lots and lots of clubs and scoop slams and rest holds and be totally fine, you know, in an era that doesn't exist 30 years ago anymore. But in this day and age, it's not enough to be a great character. You have to be able to work. You know, the fans have just been conditioned to want to see excitement and work rate, and they can't do it. You know, like LA Knight can have good matches. He can't. I've never seen him have a great match. They put him with AJ Styles last year at WrestleMania 40. I was like, this is his moment. This is his moment. If he's ever going to break out, this is the time to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that great of a match. If you can't have a good match with AJ Styles.
And they tried, man. They tried. I'll give them that. I remember during the lead up to WrestleMania, you would find them just fighting everywhere. They were trying to sell you on their hatred for one another, the violence just happening anywhere.
Yeah.
I think it happened during one of their an autograph session, just out of nowhere, people in line, and then suddenly you see these two guys fighting just to try to sell you on their feud. And it just like it's not even one of the memorable matches from that WrestleMania.
Not even close. I it just kind of, as I was talking about LA Knight, I was like, oh yeah, let me mention this match because I just remembered it.
But you know, piggybacking off of something that you said, wrestling, pro wrestling. You know, there's an argument made about where it's about storyline and characters, or is it about the wrestling moves, right? So where do you fall in that? What is pro wrestling for you? Is it about the storyline and the characters, or is it about the moves itself?
For me, it'll always be about the story. You know, the story is the thing that makes you feel something. The moves and everything, it's secondary. It's I'm kind of like getting burned out a little bit on like these matches that have like a trillion moves in them, and they're unbelievable. They're incredible spectacles, and it makes you go ooh and ah. And sometimes you're watching people shorten their careers by a lot. You look at like Kevin Owens, for example, like as like a guy who took insane bumps in his career, and every time he did it, like I remember during that Roman Reigns thing when he like slammed his head onto the steps, he slammed him on like the edge of all of the steel ring steps.
I remember that.
I was like, man, that's an insane wild bump. Even at the Royal Rumble against Cody at the ladder match, like he was taking bumps not on the ladder itself, but on the ladder propped up on its side on the edge. That's a crazy bump. And I was like, God, this guy's bump card. Like, how much more? And then you look at like what happened, and how many of those. Kevin Owens is really not like the kind of guy that I'm really talking about here, because he does have great stories and he has great character work. But some of those bumps, how many of them really meant something to the long-term story? Right. Or were they, if you're just doing throwaway bumps, you're doing like Spanish flies off the top of a steel cage or something like that. Great move, great, but I could watch WWE do a steel cage match where basically like, they did one with CM Punk and Seth Rollins a few months ago where Seth superplexed him off the top of the cage. But it was really no different than any other superplex. If it was a regular match, they would have just been standing on the top rope. But Punk was just propped up on the cage. That's them superplex off. But it got a humongous pop. I think a day after AEW did something where they did a Spanish fly off the top of the steel cage, which is legitimately insane and probably should not be something that should be allowed to happen. But again, like, I'm talking about that move. Did you remember that move?
From the cage?
Spanish fly off the top of the cage.
What was that?
Spanish fly off the top of the cage at the
Spanish fly off the top of the cage. I don't remember that move, no.
Yeah. It was a thing that happened. A crazy, wild move, but it just exists in that moment in time. But without a story, it means nothing. It's just like, what's the point? I don't mind like dangerous moves, if the story is right. And for me, I always fall on the side of like the story first. I have to be invested, to care about it. I could be oohed and awed by a match, but if I'm not like emotionally invested in it as well, I'm not going to remember it as much.
Right.
That's why, like, again, you watch Hogan and Rock on mute, not a great match. But when you watch it with the volume full blast and you're just feeling that energy from the people, and that wasn't even a great story, but it's just like, you felt something in that match. There was something happening. I feel like
Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania 18, like if you wanted to explain to somebody, less is more. Well, what do you mean less is more? Watch this match, WrestleMania 18, Hogan versus Rock. Okay. You notice they don't do anything fancy in that, but you listen to that crowd and they're eating it up every single second, right? 100%. And then you watch another match where you do get all of these acrobatic flips and everything going on, Spanish flies and whatnot, and you get that initial reaction, but you're not getting the reaction you got from these other guys that did less than these guys did.
Right, 100%. And again, like, the Hogan formula doesn't work for everybody, for sure. And some people have to do a lot more to get over, and they should do a lot more to get over at this point. But yeah, I mean, but you don't have to go so far that the only way that you can top what you just did here is to kill yourself even more. That's the point, I think, so, story is key. Story is key for me to make those matches work, and justify them.
What is the best story in professional wrestling?
Ever?
Ever.
Oh, man. Oh, geez. I can't. Oh my god, I have to really think about that. I mean, a legendary masterful story is like, you know, the mega powers explode, Miss Elizabeth stuff. I mean, that's like everybody remembers those key moments in that storyline. You know, even if you didn't watch it live, you know the story. You
Yep.
know, that's a tremendous story. Um, I'm trying to think. Very just in recent years that whole entire Bloodline saga. Whatever's going on now with Solo and his MFTs and stuff like that. That to me is like not the Bloodline anymore. Now
No.
Bloodline storyline's over. Once
Right.
once those main characters were gone, it's like that's where it ended. That whole entire Bloodline storyline, through the years, carefully built, annoying at times, dragged out at times, but they didn't overexpose it too much. They were really smart about keeping Roman Reigns, using him in the right spots, taking time off and then bringing him back and doing like a hot angle. They were smart about it. Like, Paul Heyman really, really did a great job, kind of figuring all that stuff out and pacing that, especially with Vince in control for a majority of that storyline, for it to be as successful as it was, and for him to cede as much control as he did to Paul Heyman to allow that to be great, just for how long it was in this day and age with a crowd that basically was conditioned to title changes every month or every other month, to draw out a title reign for about 4 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's really special. So that storyline to me is probably I think it's going to go down as one of the best of all time.
Do you think we'll ever get the Rock Roman match?
The Rock Roman?
Rock versus Roman. Do you think we'll ever get Rock versus Roman?
After how Dwayne Johnson really just screwed up this whole entire thing with Cody Rhodes and John Cena, and even think about it. Cody Rhodes, they spent that whole entire year building Cody Rhodes up. Rock becomes board of directors, and all of a sudden it's Rock and Roman, and then they had to pivot when the reaction to that was just so negative. And then Rock is like sitting around telling people, "Oh, it's my idea the whole time." No chance it was. There's no chance on earth that was ever. He thought, "I'm just gonna step in." He's kind of like a modern day Hogan in that sense. I hate that I'm not speaking ill of the dead, but that kind of thing of like, well, that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't work for me. No. I got to go against Roman Reigns. Can't even be a triple threat. And then they have to pivot. They pivoted big time, and good on them for doing that. Much respect for, changing that midway, but it looked chaotic. And then what he did with the heel turn this year, perfect heel turn, one of the best of all time. In the long run, at the payoff that led with them just dropping it out of nowhere, the Hogan Bash at the Beach turn is still the best. Just because of how this one ended. But he wasn't, he came in looking to just make a moment, looking to be the best, as he said about himself on Unreal, he's the best heel of all time. No one's been better. He just comes in, just does his thing, comes out at the end of Bad Blood, cuts the throat for no reason. No follow-up to anything,
Nothing.
No meaning to nothing.
Nope.
Left John Cena, one of the greatest of all time, had him turn heel, promised all these things, did nothing, and left him as basically like a pointless, directionless heel, where John Cena still did good heel work, but without that purpose, without that explanation. I mean, they didn't even mention The Rock until he mentioned him in that promo last Friday on SmackDown. That was that was like one of the first times that he mentioned The Rock. He just said he was a clout chaser, and they dropped it. I have no interest in seeing The Rock do anything else. Really, he's a great presence, a great persona. He'll, no matter what, I'm saying personally, I would not want to see him again. But when he comes out, everybody's going to go crazy and ticket prices are going to go nuts. But he has to be willing to want to do business. And I think that he looks at this as like, oh, well, I have stock options. I'm making money just from being part of this. I'm on the board of directors. I'm a director. You know, I think he just looks at this as it's like, oh, well, I have some free time, so I'll just go and do some stuff, put myself over, and leave and screw up, a whole year's worth of storylines just to get himself over. I'm not interested in it. And honestly, like that's how I feel. It isn't like a sour grapes like wrestling thing. Like they're just like a wrestling fan who doesn't know much about it. It's like you look at how many things had to change and pivot to accommodate him multiple times now, and near catastrophic damage done by, again, that would have absolutely, like if you thought WrestleMania 39 was like, oh, they didn't strike on Cody while he was hot. Cody's never going to get hotter. Won back-to-back Royal Rumbles, went through the whole entire thing of like, I got to beat the beast. He had to beat Brock Lesnar in those 3 matches. And then just continuing to keep himself hot for the rest of the year, building up to that Rumble win, building up to that WrestleMania moment. And now he wins the Rumble, and it's time for that WrestleMania moment, and we're going to do Roman and Rock. And you're going to go against Seth Rollins for this newly created, what can you possibly refer to the World Heavyweight Championship as other than a consolation prize? It's not the world title. It's not the real world title.
No.
The only title that matters is that one that's on Roman Reigns. That's crazy. I'm sure we're going to get it. I don't particularly want to see it. I'm not interested.
I remember when that SmackDown ended and Cody, respectfully bowed out of the ring, and then you're left with that visual of Roman and Rock staring at each other, and you hear the crowd and they're all into it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening finally. And then not even 24 hours later, 12 hours later, I'm on the road listening to Busted Open, and everybody's just shitting on it. It's like, no, this is not the way. This is not how we wanted this match. Like you had the window and you guys screwed it up. Like, we want Cody. We want Cody was the hashtag that was trending. Cody Crybabies came out of that. Pink robes, people wearing pink robes came out of that,
Yeah.
To want to have Cody versus Roman. So yeah, definitely I agree with you. Like, that was the plan all along. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You guys pivoted. I'll give you credit where credit's due. The pivot, the way they told the story of the pivot was great. How you had, the WrestleMania Night 1 event and the results of that bleed into Night 2, and how that match ended up being a tribal combat match, right? That all worked out great. The ending to that match, one of the best that I've seen in like ever, honestly.
Yeah. If you're gonna end a 4-year title reign, it's with all the interference that he had back in the day and all the people that he ran through. That was a spectacular way to do it. All those callbacks, all those moments,
Yep.
the Undertaker coming. I mean, dude, when I recap every single pay-per-view live for WrestleView. I was standing and just like leaning over typing, and then I had to like step back, and I was just like screaming. I was going nuts in my living room, and so was my wife, we're both into it. But they hit every single moment perfectly. I mean, I can't think of a more perfect conclusion to a really, really long, excellent story than that.
Yeah.
It's like John, on the Unreal thing where John Cena is like, oh, you have this really big book. My career is like a 500-page book, and we'd really have to screw up that last page to mess up the whole entire other 499. That Bloodline storyline was a humongous book, and man, they nailed it. That ending, that page 500 of that 500-page book, they nailed it. I mean, that was perfection. And again, exactly what should have happened before. And in some cases, the drama that led to the pivot made it even more special, because it was like, this almost didn't even happen to begin with. So
Right.
it made it more special when it finally did happen. And you really, and everybody got into the Cody Rhodes storyline. Him as a person, Cody Runnels, with Dusty passing away. I mean, he's not the only person that's ever lost a parent in their entire life and stuff like that. But, everybody loved Dusty. So you have that sentimental spot. Dusty was like everybody's dad. And just they couldn't have ended it any more perfect than they did. It really was special.
I want to come out and say that out of the Cody versus Roman story, I preferred the build for them at WrestleMania 39 than I do over their build for WrestleMania 40. And for me, it all starts with that one-on-one promo with Cody and Paul Heyman.
Yes, when he was calling him Mr. Heyman.
Yes, and he
That was
told the
awesome.
story about Paul Heyman calling Dusty to help out with an event, and that it was because of that call that they were able to get paid and whatnot. And he always appreciated Paul Heyman for giving him that opportunity. And then the genius that Paul Heyman is, to this day, I don't know whether his reaction was genuine or if it was just him being just an excellent performer. But in response to Cody saying, "Wow, you really got me in a very personal place here. I did not expect that." And he's on the verge of tears, but he's trying to hold him back, right? I till this day I don't know, and
They'll never
frankly,
tell you either.
I don't think I want to know. I always want to keep myself wondering about that. But the build and just how heavy it was about Dusty, just made that so much more personal between the two. Heck, Roman even saying like, I was the child that he wishes that he had, or something like that.
Right. Which, when they beat him at WrestleMania 39, made it even more infuriating. Which,
Yeah.
At the end, and Vince was back by that point, and I was like, "This is Vince. He's going to ruin this thing again. It's over. It's awful." But man, like even if it was a Vince thing, like they recovered from it so well, and and then it became a story of, well, Cody was initially doing this for his father to win the title that his father never won. That was the original finish the story. But that second year leading into WrestleMania 40, they pivoted and told this amazing story about, I'm not just doing it for my father now, I'm doing it for me. That was the key. That's what made it so much more personal and put him over as more than just like, well, okay, so he won the title. Now what? Now it's like, you believe in him even more, and he's more established as like a face, and he stood the test. You believe in him. Now you're inspired by him and not by someone who came before him.
Yep.
Brilliant. Really brilliant.
And
the whole finish the story, the whole bloodline saga, all coinciding and at this moment in time in Philadelphia. Wow. Holy crap.
and now we're talking about the possibility of Cody turning heel at some point near into the future. I don't know when that is, but when it happens, I just hope it's magical. I hope that it's as surprising and captivating as it was when Cena turned heel. And that's the next thing I want to talk about, right? Not just the moment that Cena turned heel, but his heel run. How would you grade Cena's heel run?
He did the best that he could with what he was given, which wasn't much. They propelled this thing with arguably one of the greatest wrestling angles of all time. I think that will stand up. It's not going to be Hogan and Bash at the Beach, but it'll be a solid and a solid number 2 with everything else after it a distant third. it was done to perfection. You know, the whole thing when he's hugging Cody Rhodes, and Cody Rhodes has that great moment where he tells The Rock to go F himself, and he embraces Cody, and then the face change, and the cameras got it perfectly. You know, we were watching WWE Untold just last night. We watched the heel turn episode, and when it was over, my wife goes, "Can you rewind it to the start of that again? I want to watch that again." She wanted to, because she was. I remember in Elimination Chamber, she was putting the girls to bed, which was too late, as we our bedtimes are very bad here, always too late. But she didn't catch the heel turn, but like the whole entire production around it and the craziness, and she wanted to just watch it play out one more time. She was captivated, you know. Spectacular work. And it was like, okay, I remember in the lead up to WrestleMania this year, they did those 3 shows. They did like a couple weeks overseas, and the very first Raw in Brussels was taking place. I think it was 4:00 our time here, and that was going to be John Cena's first appearance since Elimination Chamber. I was at work, and you know, school gets out at like 2:46, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to grade for a little bit, and then I'm going to, or maybe it was at 3:00. I can't remember. I think might have been 3:00. And I'm like, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to grade, and I'm going to recap it right here in school, because I'm not going to make it home in time to do the recap. And I remember sitting at my desk at work. I closed the blinds so everybody just thinks I checked out for the day. And I'm watching this promo. I'm waiting and waiting for the explanation of like why The Rock, and he didn't do it. I was like, okay, so they want to hold off for like a week on that or whatever, build the suspense. They never mentioned The Rock ever after that. Basically never. And it just became this whole entire thing of like, okay, well, Dwayne's not doing this anymore. The Travis Scott thing's a disaster. What do we do with Cena? And then it just has to be like, oh, the fans turned on me and you hurt my feelings and I got hair plugs for you. Okay. That's it. That's the whole, we're going to generic 1980s heel now. And it just didn't jibe, you know, because after a while you almost could start feeling that his heart wasn't into it. And then, like, you know, in that R-Truth match at Saturday's Main Event, they kind of teased that like maybe he's holding off on hitting him with the title belt. What are they going to do here? And then he hits him anyway. It just became like this thing where it's like, you know, he's just doing like this classic wrestling 101 heel shtick with no direction, no real purpose to it other than like, oh, the fans hurt my feelings for 20 years, which was like so against who, you know, John Cena is as a person. Because you as you've watched him through the years, you just kind of understand him as a person. You see all these interviews with him about how it has to make sense, and you know, how he loves the fans and the reaction and things like that. It just didn't jibe. It wasn't authentic, and without that direction of like, why did he turn with The Rock? You know, it was all business. What was this? Did he sell his soul? And then they just wound up getting the SmackDown and like, well, you know, let's just do the Cody turn now. We got the Brock deal, and just end this heel turn charade and move on with our lives. I've never seen a pivot like that. I thought it was going to be like Tommy Rich and like Memphis, you know, where it's like he, you know, pretends to be a babyface only to turn again, you know, but
nope. You know, it's just, you know, you asked for the old John Cena, you got him. Okay. So that means you're a good guy now. Okay.
What was that pop like? You know, because you were there now. When you see the Black Tron with the John Cena, you know, the heel Tron, and then the thing, I could hear the pop through my TV how outrageous that was. Because I was like, when I was watching the show, I was like, stadium shows are always kind of weird. Like they from an audio perspective. When you watch a stadium show on TV, it sounds like the crowd's not really into anything, but that's just because all the noise goes up out of the stadium. So it never comes across well on TV, but oh my God, that came across great.
Oh yeah.
What was that? On a scale of like loudest pops that you've heard in your fandom, where's that for ones that you've been there for?
Oh man, like, well, we talked about one already where Dolph Ziggler cashed in, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
I was there for that one. And if I were to compare that Dolph Ziggler win pop for John Cena, it was it dude, it was I would it was on par, but when Brock Lesnar came out afterwards, and it just blew the John Cena pop out of the window. Like that pop for Brock Lesnar was even bigger.
yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. And then after the match,
Yeah.
people are leaving. My wife is saying, "All right, should we go or do you want to stay for a little bit?" I'm like, "No, no, no. We're gonna stay because you never know what's gonna happen, right?" Like I can't imagine how many people made that mistake. Survivor Series 2023, the end
Oh,
of War Games, everyone's leaving, and then CM Punk returns, right? So uh, I I've learned a lesson uh, from watching TV, and it just carries on to today. You do not leave until Alicia Taylor says, "Thank you for attending SummerSlam."
right,
All right, I hope you all had a good night. We'll see you the next time we're in town. You do not leave until that happens, until you
right.
hear that.
Well, how many people also like even at that Survivor Series you're talking about? Not just the people that were there, but people watching. Okay, we got to the end of the match. Nothing really happened other than Randy Orton came out. Okay, click,
Yep,
and then it's like the next day you're like CM Punk. What? Because remember they ran the credits.
they did. Yep.
We're sitting on CM Punk, and how many people turned off Peacock at that moment and missed it?
Oh, and
You
missed
know,
it. Yeah, yeah.
there's a great cross platforms here a little bit, but like that World Series game with the Dodgers and I think the Oakland A's where Kirk Gibson comes out and hits that walk off home run. He was like all beat up and he couldn't move at all. And like they're at Dodger Stadium. It seems like the Dodgers are down and out, and he hits that walk off home run. And they have this like great shot because you can see the LA freeway in the background. As these people are listening to the radio broadcast as they're in their cars trying to leave, thinking that the game's long over. All you see are these brake lights come on of people that just left and they're like, "We should have stayed." How
Oh
many people,
man.
like you say, like how many times does that happen? You can never, that's the one thing that Vince said that was right. You never say never in
Never.
WWE. But
So the heel run is over, right? So, and it's not what we hoped it would be. I think it's fair to say at first it was like finally they did it. They pulled the trigger. This is going to be amazing and whatever. You had all these high hopes for Cena being a heel, and now it's over. So in your mind, in your fantasy booking, how would you have booked what Cena's heel run would look like as far as the reasoning, the justification why he turned heel, joining The Rock, let him selling his soul and whatnot? How would you book that in hindsight?
I would have had The Rock involved a little more, even if it was just for like one or two segments leading into WrestleMania, or even something at WrestleMania where The Rock, is there for it, to kind of just like, they're together through it. Maybe it's like Cena saying, for 25 years of doing this, it's I've given my all to you, and what have the fans given back to me? Nothing but grief. And for once in my life I'm doing this for me, which is kind of like where they went. But I would go a little like further into it, like you're like you people, because of all this goofiness that I had to do for you, I'm like pigeonholed into like these roles in Hollywood, and The Rock's gonna take me to the next level, and he's gonna take my career, this last part of my career to the next level. He's gonna make me the best of all time, or help me become the best of all time by winning that 17th title and beat Ric Flair, and all these things that just make him seem like a real selfish, just egomaniac, you know, anything like that, and
Yeah.
made him a little more vicious too. I would have had, the beatdown of Cody was excellent at the Elimination Chamber. The Cody getting color at that was like, very, very well done. Same thing with that thing with The Rock last year where he beat Cody Rhodes outside the building and whipped him and had him bleeding and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Great thing, because they are very judicious in their use of blood. It's like it's only for hot angles and only at the right time. but like, you know, I could have stood to have him destroy Cody in that WrestleMania main event a little more.
Yeah.
That WrestleMania main event is probably one of the worst of all time. You know, just awful the way
And then all we got was Travis Scott.
The Travis Scott stuff, you know, and even like, you know, what he did to him. Like, I think they tried to put over like hitting with the title as like a devastating thing, which was, I guess that they had like, because like he did it in every single match, and that was like how he pinned everybody. But you know, at the end, it doesn't even mean anything. They teased it in the SummerSlam match, but never really like went with it. You know, it just was the whole thing was just such a disappointment. You know, I would have had him be more vicious. I would have had him brutalize Cody Rhodes and leave him a bloody mess at WrestleMania. Nothing, you know. Even the Randy Orton match, you know, like they just had like this match where it was just like, oh, he's the bad guy now. We're just doing a whole bunch of callback spots.
Right.
I would have like broken from nostalgia and been a little just had him have an edge, have more viciousness, you know. I liked the idea of him not changing his look and stuff like that. Like, oh, you guys want a new theme, you want this and that, you get nothing. I like that part of it. I thought that was really, really smart, because everybody's like, oh, John Cena's gonna have a new he's gonna have new music. Oh, apparently when he was gonna turn heel in 2012, he recorded a new theme. We're gonna hear it finally. No, you guys get nothing.
Yeah,
good. That was smart.
That was good. That was very that's definitely something that a heel would do. And
but that I think that's when they still had hope that like John Cena was going to. I mean, I'm sorry, not John Cena, but I think that's when they still had hope that The Rock was going to do something. And then when that hope dried up, all that stuff kind of went away, and he was just like 80s bad guy. Oh, I hate fans.
I had a fantasy booking that I pitched. I called it the Busted Open Show, and I got buried. I got buried, dude, so bad. Dave LaGreca hears me out, and the first thing he says was, "I fucking hate it," and then he follows that up with, "I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it." Exactly like that.
Wow.
I got buried with that with my fantasy booking thing, and I'll tell you what it was too. So
I'm all in on this.
And you know what? And be as honest as you can be. You know, you write for WrestleView. You just be as honest as you could. So basically, the whole idea was that I was pitching the fact that John Cena has basically been brainwashed in a sense, right? Because a guy who's been that much of a babyface for that amount of time and just happens to just sell his soul just does not seem like it did not seem like it made sense, right? So my idea was that The Rock would partner with Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross trying to be this person that finds that inner demon in you, trying to get it to bring it out, right? So through some series of backstage segments and whatever, you find out that The Rock was compromised X amount of time ago, whatever. The finish for WrestleMania happens and whatnot, but it's the follow-up. It's after WrestleMania where the story changes, where now it's not about trying to beat The Rock, trying to beat John Cena to get the title back, but it's about saving John Cena from The Rock to get the old John Cena back. And how I never really got as far as how you would do it. I guess the biggest blunt force trauma you can get to kind of break the whole thing, but like the catalyst to it would have been, you know, just like we saw, The Rock doing the neck slash gesture. If you've ever seen the movie the Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington, right?
Oh yeah.
So in that movie, they say the person's name 3 times, and then that activates whatever is in their head. The neck slash was the activation in whatever was done to John Cena, and then everything else after is what I said.
Okay. I don't hate it as much as Dave LaGreca.
Okay.
All right, it's probably a little too magical
Okay.
to probably be believable by like a large fan base, of people that they're trying to hook in. It's a little, I remember like there's a lot of like different names, like they call this like the Paul Levesque era and stuff like that. But one of the things that I think that has stuck that they said once, but to me I always think of this as the case is this is the reality era. So that to me is like that probably would have been something that would have been great, like couple like Papa Shango kind of stuff, like the brainwashing and the whole thing, and kind of like in Office Space, where it gets activated and the therapist dies and he's just totally aloof for the rest of the movie.
I love that movie.
Me too. The guy dies, he's just like no, I gotta tell you, it's really creative though. It's really creative. Yeah, I don't know if that, and then of course, like then your position in Karrion Kross is like somebody who's bigger than, more powerful than The Rock or something like that. But which is great. That's great. You're going to town with the roster that you're given, over a legend. But yeah, and I don't think it warranted all that from Dave LaGreca, but I mean, I understand. I think it's very.
I gotta send you the clip. I recorded the clip of that, so I'll send it to you because
so
it's so what listening to it back. It's just funny to hear me getting buried on national radio. So yeah, I'll send that to you.
All good.
Oh man. Next question for you. Is I had these list of questions ready. Oh, okay, so a lot of people, when it comes to pro wrestling, they're in it for the long time, and then they dip out. Life happens, or they get disinterested for a while. Have you ever has your fandom with wrestling ever stopped at one point or another? And if it has, why? If it has not, then my main question is, what keeps your fandom going for so long? What keeps you in it?
That's a great question, man. That's a really, really excellent question. So the answer to that is no. I've not had a break in my wrestling fandom at all, pretty much. I mean, as a kid, I didn't watch it religiously, but when I started watching, religiously every week, it was probably like it was during the Attitude Era for sure, 100%. There are shows that I miss that I just, if I'm especially if I don't recap something, I'm not watching it at this point. But 20 years of WrestleView and analyzing this and recaps and God, I can't even imagine how many recaps I've done in my life and how many hours I've spent like watching and every match from like Eva Marie versus Alicia Fox to Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns gets the same treatment. Like I'm writing every move, watching every move. I'm like deep into it. Like I always say, like it's deeper than just like the average person watches. You can leave the room. I watch every show that I recap from top to bottom, every move, every segment. So it's I don't know what would have happened. I mean, especially some of those times in like 10 years ago. If you read some of my Raw recaps from then, I was pretty negative on the product, and like there was one point I was so fed up with the product and like the how predictable it was and formulaic and crappy with the scripted promos and Roman Reigns being shoved down your throat. I counted over I think there was almost 80 shows in a row, 80 Raw shows that happened where the show did not start with a wrestling match in a row. So every single Raw from the week after the season premiere of Raw, which is they did a match with Chris Jericho and Bray Wyatt in a steel cage that kicked off the show. from then until I think January 20, that was 2014, by the way. I think that was September or October 2014. And the next time they opened up Raw with a match was January 2016. I was incensed about that. So like like I probably would have stopped watching at that point if I wasn't being paid to watch.
Damn.
Yeah, but there are times where every now and then you like watch a show and you're like, why am I still doing this?
Because you're getting paid.
Yeah, and then you get the Zell at the end of the month. You're like, oh yeah, that's why.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But you know what? It's like it's something that WrestleView really has sustained the interest, and almost by necessity. I have to find reasons to sometimes really want to do it. Not lately, but like when Vince was in charge. Oh yeah, that 2019 was like the worst of the worst with Corporal Corbin. And or was that 2018? I can't remember. But like Corporal Corbin in the vest, running around and doing things. And they sent the McMahons out there and they're like, we're going to listen to you and we're changing things. Nothing changed.
Nothing changed. Nope.
I really thought about it. I was like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is like the end of, maybe it's time for me to think about leaving WrestleView. I was already in it for 10 years by that point. I was like, yeah. I think I'm good.
And no hate for Corbin, man, but he was not the right choice to retire Kurt Angle.
No. Kurt, even Kurt Angle says that. It's like it was not even his choice. He did not want to do that either, but that's what he had. But again, like WrestleView really, like, out of sheer necessity, I've had to. Like I am absolutely not saying I'm like Michael Jordan. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm about to say, but like, how Michael Jordan, he was so great. I'm not even saying I'm not saying I'm great either. I'm just saying, just for comparison's sake here, that he was so great and would be so like bored during basketball matches that he had to make up fake scenarios in his head that he believed in his whole heart, just to sustain him, to keep him at his level of greatness. So like there's that great ESPN documentary they did on Michael Jordan. And he talks about in detail how this one new rookie kind of like scored a lot of points and was like, hey, good game, Mike, kind of like showing him up, like, oh, the new guy's taking over. And he just kept thinking about that. And the next time he faced that team, he like posted like, 52 points. It was like one of his best games ever. And then he goes through this whole entire thing and how he posted all these points. And then every single teammate was like, I was there. That never, ever happened. That never happened. And it was just something he had to make up. I've had to make up in my own mind sometimes things just to kind of sustain that like fandom, that level, so that I can be good. I want my recaps to be, solid. I remember when I first started recapping and it was June 2008. And I was recapping SmackDown. They didn't have a SmackDown recap on WrestleView, so they kept posting WWE results. I was like, it's time. I think this is a sign. I got to do SmackDown. And that's how I started in June 2008. And I remember getting an email a month later in July from a soldier who was, I think he was serving like in Iraq or something like that. And he's like, oh, I just want to thank you because like reading your recaps makes me feel like I'm actually watching it.
Oh wow!
I'm stationed overseas, and I can read your recap and feel like I'm like actually watching. I can visualize the whole entire thing. So when I recap, I early on, I'm glad I got that email from that guy. I wish I still had it, but I always think about like who can't watch it, and I try to make my recaps as detailed as possible. So I have to be on my game when I do these things, and it means a lot to me. It means so that does sustain me. That has sustained it through the years. There was a couple times in that Vince era, 2014, 2015 were pretty brutal. After Daniel Bryan, I guess, that I was like, maybe, he can give it up. 2019 was another one. 2018, 2019, pretty brutal. But yeah, no break. I've been going since before I was even in high school.
Wow.
Almost continuously. There was like one time I didn't watch Raw live every week, and because I was working on Monday nights, so but I would still catch the highlights and
Highlights,
record
recaps.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything, you know.
All right.
So yeah, no break, none
That's awesome,
whatsoever.
man.
I've
That's
watched
awesome.
like every pay-per-view. Jesus, since all the In Your Houses.
Oh, those In Your Houses.
And I love wrestling so much that the 30th anniversary of the Monday Night Wars starting is actually coming up in September. September 4th was the first WCW Nitro from Mall of America, 1995, 30 years ago.
Holy cow.
So I've organized this thing with me and another person on WrestleView, Roy Nemmer. We're going to every week post the recap of the Nitro and the Raw that happened and talk about the history of it all the way to the end of the Attitude Era.
Wow.
Basically, or until WCW goes out of business. So we're talking like a basically like a 6.5 year project that we're about to embark on. I have started so I was like, let me just recap a whole bunch of shows real quick so I have stuff to go, and then I can recap a whole bunch more at a later date. I've fallen like so in love with this again, watching Raw from 1995, which is not great, but just going through the history again and and unlocking some of these memories that I had forgotten about and some of these matches. Like, I'm all into Bret Hart versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte right now. Like, I am all in on all this stuff. And Bill Watts just got hired. He's going to be fired 3 weeks later. I'm writing all this history right now. So we got this coming up on WrestleView. But like, again, finding ways to sustain the fandom. It's almost like, recapping Raw live every Monday is great, and every pay-per-view is great, but the fact that I have a platform that I can go back and kind of share my thoughts on some old stuff too is pretty great and pretty humbling. And WrestleView's been around since 1997, so we have quite a following.
That's such an awesome project to and with the anniversary coming up, you guys watching those old school episodes that went head to head with one another, and then putting together the history around it, everything that follows up afterwards. That's such a cool project, man. I'll definitely be looking out for those posts.
Please do.
And reading them. Yeah, anything I can do to support you with that, I'll do it.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I was like, we're going to try to put together like a podcast at the end of each month and kind of talk about like the highlights and what happened and news and history and all that stuff. So we're going to try to make a go of that. But the main thing is I want to make sure that we keep the recaps consistent every Thursday. They'll be out on WrestleView starting September 4th. Now, the first Nitro does not run head-to-head against Raw. Raw was off that week for the U.S. Open. So the first real head-to-head Monday Night War was on September 11th, 1995.
No way.
Yes.
I always wonder how much McMahon hated the fact that if it was the U.S. Open or some, what was it called? This
Westminster Dog Show.
The dog show. Those were the things that forced him to not be on live as scheduled. I can't imagine how pissed that always made him.
Do you remember? You definitely remember this when the Denver Nuggets they booked the arena and the Nuggets somehow made the playoffs and they had to cancel Raw in the arena because they were having the playoffs there.
No, I never knew this.
Oh man, this was like oh god, it was so funny. And this is when Coach was at ESPN. Vince was like insanely furious about this, that they had to basically like a week before Raw was supposed Raw in Denver was supposed to happen, they canceled their spot, and ultimately they wound up going to the Staples Center in LA, and Vince sends out some guy dressed as the owner of the Denver Nuggets and made fun of him and all that stuff. But that he made a big deal about it. He wound up on ESPN and Jonathan Coachman interviewed him. So now this is Coach trying to be like, a professional anchor. Yeah. And he's like, so, and Vince is like, well, this is ridiculous that they canceled us. Because if the owner, if they put us in there, not thinking that they would ever make the playoffs. So their owner doesn't even believe in them. Like, we shouldn't be canceled. It's like, you can't, the NBA playoffs supersede Raw. Sorry, guy, just find a new spot. And I just remember at the end, because this is Vince 2008. He still had that like short haircut from being shaved bald.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Coachman was like, well, best of luck with this whole entire thing, and we'll see what happens. And as soon as he said best of luck, Vince goes, no. And that was it. That's how the interview ended. He does not accept luck from Jonathan Coachman. He just he goes, well, good luck, Mr. McMahon. He goes, no. And that's how it ended. Everyone's like, okay.
I wonder if I could find that. I want to see that.
You could definitely find it. The guy, I forget the Nuggets owner's name. I think it's like it was E something. What the hell was it? Kroenke. Stan Kroenke. Stan Kroenke. So he goes by E. Stanley Kroenke, and he goes E. So like when Vince sent that actor out dressed as the guy, which is just so petty, Vince. He goes, what does E even stand for? And the actor goes, it stands for Enos. Ennis is the guy's name. That's his first name. He goes, Enos.
Oh God!
You have Enos envy. It was so absurd. That was so embarrassing. I remember some of the crew that used to watch the shows with me at Hooters were at my house. We were in my mom's family living room watching this on the flat screen. We're just like, this is so embarrassing. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Typical Vince. Like when Donald Trump and Rosie O'Donnell, they had those actors come out and he was like slamming her into Fudgy the Whale and stuff like that. Yeah. Nobody could be pettier than Vince. Which is like why I love watching these like Raws from 1995, because he was like, as like goofy and stupid as those things were, he was the most recent recap I just did was for October 2nd, and this is the day before the O.J. Simpson verdict came out. So they ran a poll on Raw. Call in, 50 cents a call. Tell us if O.J. is guilty or not, and all the proceeds will go to this foundation for abused children. And like totally shameless, totally gross, inappropriate. When this organization found out that WWF was giving them this donation that was made from the proceeds of a goofy question about a double murder case, they were furious. They didn't accept the money, and WWF had to write them an apology letter. Like, That's typical Vince, just like goofy stuff. And then in the middle of the show, I guess Pope John Paul II was coming to America at this point, and he goes, "Oh, we're having a charity fundraiser at Madison Square Garden on Friday afternoon. We're inviting Pope John Paul II there. Hope His Holiness can rearrange his schedule to be there for these handicapped children." I was like, he knew no shame. That's the kind of the amazing thing about Vince McMahon, is that this guy is a despicable, disgusting human being. I mean, he's a genius in terms of being a businessman, but like as a human being, he's gross. But man, he has never not doubled down on it. Even to this very day, the guy is still trying at 79, almost 80 years old. I think is Vince going to be 80 like later this month? I think he's an August baby.
Yeah.
He is. August 24th, he's going to be 80 years old later this month.
Wow.
And he's still making a go of it. He's still, opening up like some kind of entertainment company with old directors from WWE. After having his entire legacy like totally removed from him, he's still going. He will not stop. It's kind of amazing. WWF is in the throes of near bankruptcy, and he's inviting the Pope to a stupid event on TV. Knows no shame. No shame whatsoever. It's kind of I'm not going to say it's inspiring, but it is amazing. This is, he's got like the never say die attitude, but just like he'll never say die to not doing the right thing.
Yep. That's totally him.
He's doubled down on doing everything like as hokey and as possible.
The amount of things that he approved that aired live just astound me, man. Astound me so much. The first one that comes to mind is the Katie Vick storyline. Can't believe that made it to air.
Oh my God.
His use of the divas back in like 06 to 09 era, like Candice Michelle.
How problematic that is now.
What's that?
You think about how problematic that is now. Knowing the whole story of him now, that he was the fact, Joe, think about Sweet Kim, you know, booking her to sit in a wheelchair while you make out with another woman. Would that ever fly in your house? Ever?
Never. No.
The best was on his documentary, where he's interviewed, and they told him about, like, he had to talk about why Sable left WWF in the first place, and then he didn't even remember that she was rehired, and that he booked multiple angles where he made out with Sable after she sued him for sexual harassment. Then he's booking her in all these angles to make out with him. And they're like, well, what about, when she came back? He goes, well, what happened? And then you hear Paul Heyman off screen go, you were kissing on her. And he goes, oh, I was. How crazy is that?
Crazy. Insane, man. The amount of things we can talk about that McMahon did aired live. We'll be here all night.
The Stephanie pregnancy angle that he wanted.
Oh my God, he pitched that. Oh my God, I can't believe he even pitched that, the whole pregnancy angle.
And so, like, I know about that from his Mr. McMahon DVD that came out a million years ago. They sold a DVD about him, and it was like a very, very sanitized story of his life, not like the Netflix one. But on the Netflix one, he was still actively upset that she didn't go for that. He was still really, really, really upset that she didn't go for that and that she didn't go for the money. Like, there's certain lines you don't cross, man. There's certain lines that you can't come back from. Like, deal breaking, ESPN not covering them streaming wise if they do a storyline like that. An incest storyline, that's too far at this point, and there's no recovering from that.
No.
Eddie Guerrero passed away. Eddie's in hell 3 months later. What?
Oh,
this guy's crazy.
Yeah, and like you wonder how did he even get the okay from Vicky to approve such an angle?
If he even asked her.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just like, wow. I mean, really, anything for the dollar. Granted that has led to some, great payoffs in the long run too. Of like, he was able to put bad feelings aside to like rehire Hogan, Hall, and Nash in 2002. Like there couldn't have been a bigger chasm between those guys and Vince, and for the sake of doing business, he brought him back. How many times has he brought back people that were probably no good and hated his guts, and then all of a sudden they're doing business together? Ultimate Warrior is another example of that too.
Bret Hart was another example.
Bret Hart, big time.
Yeah. Yep.
But to make money and do business, he'll put it all aside and bring those personalities back.
Yep. Mike, I want to thank you for being on here tonight.
My pleasure.
I told you we were going to be on here for an hour, and we're approaching 2 hours already, man. We talked about this before we went live.
I know.
And you told me, don't worry about it. It's all good. But still,
I'm sorry, man.
just to give me your time. I hear your family in the background, and
sorry.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But I really appreciate your time to come on here and just chat pro wrestling with me. It's so much fun. I love doing this every week, and I would love to have you back on here at some point in the future.
Anytime.
If we can make that happen, that would be great. I only have one more question to ask you before we start signing off here.
All right.
Watching this and doing this for so long, you're not only watching, but you're also part of the industry in a sense because of your work on WrestleView for the last 20 years. What would you say you have learned from pro wrestling that you carry with you today, and that you might even consider carrying those lessons to the future with your family?
That's a great question, because it's like there's so much like so much seediness around wrestling that there's a lot of stuff that like that just can't translate into your life. But if you like the lesson is, I think that if you love something, and like I didn't have an athletic bone in my body when I was in high school or anything like that, but I loved this genre so much that I found a way to make it a part of my life, and not just make it a part of my life. Yeah, like it's great to make money from it. So yes, I have been able to profit from wrestling. It's not like making or breaking my life or anything like that. It's like extra. Like I always call stuff like I do, like the side hustles that I do as like my FU money. Like I make enough money from my main job of teaching that, like, I can pay my car payment, I can pay my insurance, I can pay my mortgage and everything, and take care of my family. But like this extra money has allowed me freedom to, book a nice vacation, or get an, if my kid wants a little something extra, it's not like I'm not, it helps me not to live paycheck to paycheck and stuff like that. So I've been very, very fortunate. And I think like the lesson that like I would take from wrestling to my family is it's like more of a lesson of like what of like how I've approached it, where if you love something enough, even if it doesn't go the way that you thought it would, like I thought as a kid, I was like, I want to be a wrestler. I want to do this. And I was convinced, I thought like basically like, well, that's my only avenue ever to be in wrestling is to be a wrestler. But I found a way to not do that and still be involved, and that perseverance of wanting to be part of it, and then figuring out a way, and then sustaining that for almost 2 decades now is I could just use that to teach the girls, like, if you love something enough, you can always find a way to make it part of your life, if you really, really want it. And wrestling, because of the fans and the readers and the interest that websites like WrestleView can exist, has allowed me to live that dream. It's just a different dream than I thought it would be, but this is when WrestleMania hits and I'm doing my WrestleMania recap, as much as like WrestleMania is like the Super Bowl for the wrestlers, that's my Super Bowl as well. So like I get to, like, before I start that recap, I have like when I used to play a big show with the band or something like that, or when it's like Christmas and I'm conducting at the church, like these are like big moments. Like I feel like that level of like performance anxiety before I get into my recap, because I wanted to, this is it. This is going to be the recap that has by far the most eyes on it the entire year, and I want to deliver. So that, if you love something enough, you'll find a way to be involved in it and make it part of your life.
That's awesome, man. Is there anything you wanna you wanna plug?
Just WrestleView.com is it's a great website. We're not like breaking scoops or anything like that. But we have press passes to WWE. My wife has interviewed Paul Levesque, and
No way.
Yeah, we used to call him to those NXT post shows. Those pressers, and when it was all conference calls. Now we can't fly out to events or anything like that. But like when we were doing the pressers that you had just called into, we were interviewing Paul Levesque. I've interviewed many wrestlers in my time, been backstage, and like all these like great things. I'm sorry, what was the last question? I'm like going off on a tangent here.
No. We were just talking about if there was anything you wanted to plug.
Yeah, WrestleView. We don't break. Yeah, like I said, we don't break the scoops. We aggregate a lot of news, but like I like to think of WrestleView, and I started off as a recap. I'm the editor in chief now. I like to think of WrestleView as like the AP news of internet wrestling, where we're not breaking all the news, but like if the news is on WrestleView, you have to know that it's important. And we have the best recaps by far.
All right, everybody, you got to check out WrestleView.com for the best recaps. If you cannot watch a show, be sure to check out WrestleView.com for the best recaps. You'll probably even be reading Mike's recaps as well.
Chances.
Which show do you recap the most often right now? Are you on a Raw, SmackDown, NXT, or just the PLEs?
So we have people designated for all of the for every show. So we have Alex Cars, who does AEW Dynamite. We got Jerome Weiland, who does Collision. Roy Nemmer does SmackDown. I do Raw. I still consider it the flagship of WWE, and I do all the PLEs.
Okay, sweet.
So except for the AEW shows, then Alex does those. But I try to watch as much as I can. So.
All right, cool. Yeah, I try to watch as much AEW as I can, but I definitely catch more WWE than I do AEW. There's just so much content to watch nowadays. It's so hard, especially when you have a family, to catch all of it. And I don't have cable, so I can't even watch SmackDown on USA.
There you go. We'll get a VPN, and you can watch SmackDown on Netflix.
That's what I'll have to do.
There you go.
That's what I'll have to do. All right, Mike. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, man, for having me on. It's great talking to you, and this is it's just great catching up with you, man. It's great to see you doing this. So thank you for thinking of me to be on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much. You have a good night, man.
You too, man. Be well.